Good morning and welcome to Through the Lens. The episode today is entitled The 93rd Naval Construction Battalion. Our guest is Howie Schmellick, who was a seaman in the Seabees during World War II. Howie, how are you doing this morning?
Fine, thank you. I'd like to thank Heather and Bruce for all the time and hard work they did in this presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Before we get to your military service, let us provide our viewers with information about the Seabees, and more specifically about the 93rd Battalion during World War II. The earliest Seabees were recruited from the civilian construction trades because of the emphasis on recruiting experienced construction workers rather than physical standards. The average age of a Seabee during the early part of the war was 37 years old. The 93rd Battalion was organized and training began on May 7, 1943, and it was commissioned as a unit of the United States Navy on May the 22nd, 43. A battalion is comprised of approximately 1,070 men. Over 150 Seabee battalions served during World War II. A member of the 93rd, Mickey Dugan, filmed on-site activity of the 93rd from October 1943 through April 1945. We will show clips of the extraordinary activities of the 93rd as they constructed airstrips on Green Island and Samar in the Philippines. There is no dialogue with the film, however, there is music of the times as background. Howie, how old were you at the time and what made you enlist into the service?
I was 21 years old. I had worked at General Electric for 3 years, and all my buddies were starting to go into the service. So I decided that I was going down to enlist. And I wanted to go into the Marines, but I couldn't make it because of my eyesight. So the fella told me it'd be good if I went in the Navy or if I went in the Seabees. So I did, and I'm thank God that I did, because they were a good bunch of men.
Your shipmates at that time, you were 21. Some of them were old enough to be your father.
My father, yes. They were old enough to be my father. Most of them were married, a lot of them. And they were very good. If you want to learn and you weren't a smart guy, they took care of you. So they were very good.
Your training with the 93rd was conducted at 4 different camps in the USA. The first camp was Camp Perry near Williamsburg, Virginia. Tell us a little bit about that camp.
Well, that was more or less the place where you get shots, they got your clothing. You did go around and pick up cigarette butts, and more or less got you trained to do what you were told to do, and you had to salute every time you did anything.
Right, that was your boot camp where you went from becoming a civilian to becoming a sailor.
That's right, and you got chiggers, lots of chiggers.
From there you went to Camp Endicott in Rhode Island.
Right. From
May to July 43 for advanced training. What was it like in the Rhode Island area?
Well, they made you climb nets because you had to come down off the ship in nets, rope nets. And then we had tires that you had to go from one to the other, jump in and out of them like they do at football. And there was many things we did. They were very, very hard to do, and you worked at them.
Good. From there, you went to on to Camp Parks in California in July through August. Camp Parks is located 28 miles east of Oakland, California. You also had a unusual train trip going across from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yes, we went in trains in dress blues, and it was 90-degree heat through Texas, and it was steam engines where they had the coal shooting out the stack, and we were covered with soot. And they didn't let us off the train. We stopped at a couple spots, but we had to stay on the train. And it was quite a long trip.
Mm-hmm. And the training there was more of the same? Or?
Yes, more of the same, plenty of it. And then there was quite a bit of training. I mean, they were after you to do what they had to do, and it was good. We needed it.
Now, and your final training site in California was at Camp Rousseau from August to October in '43. What was the primary training at that site?
That was getting ready to load the Parita and all. They had different times that we had to do certain things, and we were just told what we had to do, and we did it.
So you were loading the LSTs to
right.
head out into the Pacific.
Right.
While you were at Camp Rousseau, another very important event in your life occurred on September 24th, 1943. How did this come about?
Well, it came about. I had been home for 10 days on leave, and my girlfriend I have known through high school and all. We wanted to get married, but my father kind of butted in on it, didn't want it to happen. So I got sent back out to Camp Rousseau, and I thought, well, I'm going to get married, so I had to call her up, and she flew out, and we got married in Ventura by a minister in Ventura. And I waved goodbye 2 weeks later. She was on one side of the cyclone fence, and I was on the other.
Okay. Well, the 93rd Battalion then sailed from the West Coast aboard the USS Parita on October 14th, bound for Green Island in the tropics. During this voyage, King Neptune's shellbacks held court, and you experienced one of the great traditions of the sea. You went from being a pollywog to a shellback. Tell us a little about that.
Well, they had a big pool like the people have in their backyards, a plastic pool on deck. They had a chair rigged up so they could trip it with the back toward the pool. And when you sat it, everybody was naked. I didn't care who it was, officers, everybody. They all had certain haircuts, any kind. They sat you in a chair, and the fella had a syringe, and he shoots some water, and it tasted like it had iodine in it. Shot it in your mouth, and then he tripped the lever, and into the pool you went. And when you were trying to get out, a bunch of fellas had paddles with holes drilled in them, and they whacked you good, and you swam and got out as quick as you could. So after that, then we got a certificate.
And you've been a shellback ever since.
Yep.
On November 1st, 1943, the USS Parita with the 93rd Seabees aboard waited to pull into the crowded harbor at Noumea